Are you ready to leverage podcast sponsorships to make more money from your podcast? Discover the secrets of landing lucrative sponsorships with Danielle Desir Corbett, podcast marketing coach and founder of Women of Color Podcasters. In this eye-opening episode, Danielle reveals her three-part framework for attracting brands, sharing innovative sponsorship formats beyond traditional ads, and debunks common misconceptions about podcast partnerships. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up your sponsorship game, Danielle's insider tips and success stories will transform how you approach brand collaborations. Don't miss this opportunity to learn how you can stand out in the podcasting landscape and better monetize your passion with sponsorships. Hello, incurable creators. I'm excited to bring you some bonus episodes featuring exclusive interviews from the 2023 PodUp Virtual Podcasting Summit. Each Thursday for months, you're going to hear interviews from a diverse range of podcasting and marketing experts. My hope is these repurposed interviews will inspire you with new ideas and insights to take your podcast to the next level. And of course, remember to listen every Tuesday for our regular episodes of Podcasting Secrets as well. Now, let's dive into today's bonus interview from PodUp's 2013 Podcasting Summit. Hello, I'm Nathan Gwilliam, the CEO of PodUp and the host of the Podcasting Summit. And today I'm joined with Danielle Desir Corbett. Danielle is a podcast marketing coach. She's the host of the Thought Card podcast and the founder of WOC, or Women of Color Podcasters. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview, Danielle.
Yes, I'm so excited. I really feel that sponsorships is one of those areas that indie podcasters can really leverage, and there's a space for us. And I'm really excited to just kind of share all the things that I've been learning over the past couple of years.
And today we're going to talk about some different ways that podcasters can stand out to brands and sponsors. Let's just start off with the basics. What is a podcast sponsorship? What does that entail?
So podcast sponsorships is when you are partnering with a brand to promote their offerings, whether that is a product or a service or an experience. And there are lots of different ways to go about executing and using marketing. But primarily as podcasters, a lot of us will think of a few separate ways, including ads on podcasts, whether that's a pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. But there's also many other things that you can add onto sponsorships as well that encompass your entire brand. But overall, you are helping a brand promote their product, service, or experience and introducing your audience to that brand. And you're getting a payment for that partnership and that mention.
So what do brands really care about when they enter into these sponsorships? What are they really looking for from the podcasters?
I think a lot of podcasters assume that they are going to care a lot about download numbers. And I will say downloads is not irrelevant. It is relevant. But before you even get there, I believe that podcast sponsors really care about your synergy, meaning are your listeners aligned with their target audience, who they want to get in front of and who they want to be customers. So that is very important, that synergy. So important. That actually would be the first thing that a brand will typically be looking for. Secondly, your reach. That's going to be things like downloads, your page views on your website, your follower count, engagement, those numbers and those stats, you cannot escape it. They're going to ask for it. So you want to be able to provide that. And then I would say the secret sauce is past partnerships. Especially with audio, there are a lot of brands who have not advertised on podcasts yet. They have never worked with a podcaster. And it's very difficult to imagine what that can look like, even though we've all heard of radio ads, for example. We know what it is, but a lot of times brands just are having a difficult time understanding the ROI. So it's really important for podcasters to have a body of work or portfolio, like I call it, and that can showcase the different campaigns you've done with other brands. Imagine you are talking to a brand and you have nothing to showcase. It's going to be a lot harder to convince them to work with you than if you say, hey, I worked with your other competitors in your industry or other related brands. So once they start to see who you've worked with and what those campaigns look like and sound like, and also what was the result of those campaigns, it's a lot easier to sell yourself and to really showcase the value of working with you. At the end of the day, a podcast sponsorship is really a brand investing their marketing dollars in you and in you as a marketing channel. So with all of these things, they want to make sure they're in aligned with like who you're talking to is who they want to reach. They want to make sure that the reach makes sense. And they also want to make sure that, okay, I'm not the only one probably, and that there are other brands and they have a track record of success. These are some of the things I think that brands truly care about. And I feel like once I unlocked that, that really helped me to be able to work with more brands and create bigger packages and eventually leave my corporate job and go full-time podcasting.
Okay, so you're saying that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And as we build out these portfolios for advertisers, we should be providing them with case studies and examples of other people we've had and been successful with. And you also gave some examples of some metrics and statistics that we should include in that. Would you just remind us, what are the most important metrics that you think need to be in that package?
Sure. The most important metrics are actually going to be housed in your media kit. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about that in particular. But some of those statistics are going to include your podcast downloads, are going to include your page views on your website, because that's, again, part of your ecosystem, part of your brand. That can include your follower count on social media. That include also your engagement rate. So these are some of those things that really give them a holistic view of, okay, if we work together on a podcast campaign that goes beyond just the audio file, that's going to be our reach.
Is the media kit the same thing as the portfolio?
So the media kit, it would be separate from the portfolio. So typically, I would always encourage my coaching clients to have 3 separate documents or assets that they're going to be using at various stages of when you're approaching a brand and talking to a brand. So your portfolio is going to be this body of work, all the things that you've created that you want to showcase, whether that's different ads you've ran for different campaigns or anything relevant that a brand can review and look at. And that portfolio is typically going to be housed in your Work With Me page on your actual website. So this Work With Me page will address a brand head on and tell them, hey, listen, here's what it's like to work with me. Here are some examples. Here are some examples, results of those campaigns. And you really put it all out there. Now, one of the things that can be really intimidating for folks, especially as a beginner, is like, I don't have any examples or I don't have any brands I've worked with. So how am I building a portfolio? So one of the ways I would encourage folks to do this is to start as an affiliate relationship, for example. So let's say you have a product that you really love. Whether you are an affiliate or not, you can start to put feelers out and running, let's say, an ad or mentioning those products to your audience to see if they're going to bite, if they're going to take advantage of like the offer that you're sharing with them. And this is really important because you really want your audience to get used to hearing you mentioning products and services and it not being like weird or like a turnoff. And you also want to encourage your audience to take action, right? Because a lot of brands, they're looking for 2 different types of campaigns. One kind of campaign is conversion, meaning I want to hire Danielle because I want to get 100 leads to my widget. That's campaign 1, which is called a conversion campaign. You want them to convert to paying customers, or you want them to do something physically. But then there are also brand awareness campaigns, meaning that a brand wants to align with you so that they can get the word out about their product, service, or experience. And in that situation, there's no real true, you have to perform. It's not performative. It's more of like you're part of the episode, your impressions, like they're going to hear about it. They may or may not take you up on the action, right? So knowing these 2 types of campaigns, it's really important as podcasters to start mentioning products and services that you like and you genuinely care about and you think your audience would appreciate, and encourage them also to take action, whether it's click on the link, check out this resource, and you want to track all of these things again so that you can be able to say, hey, like, even though this wasn't a full on, partnership, I did mention this brand. And as a result of that brand mention, I got 150 clicks. And these are certain things that you can start to track. Even if you don't have a full-fledged campaign already, you can start to do these testers to get your audience used to what ads sound like and get them to start taking action. I think lastly, I'll stop here and say that one of the pieces that I missed initially when I was starting to pitch brands and start to work with brands was getting my audience into the groove that, hey, these sponsors are helping to support the show and you're going to hear about them and you should really check them out because they're totally in line with our values and what we care about. I really didn't do that until like 2.5 years, almost 3 years after I launched my show. So I really had to get and exercise my audience to get used to hearing ads, taking action. So I would say if you're starting out, wherever you're starting out, get started mentioning things on the show, encouraging your audience to take action, do something, because that will definitely help prepare you for campaigns in the future.
How do you know if you're going from not having sponsors to adding your first sponsors? How do you know you're ready to start doing that?
Yeah, that goes back to the action piece. So are your listeners taking action on whatever calls to actions you have on your episodes? Are they going to do what you would like them to do? That's very important, again, because if you have a conversion campaign and the brand is expecting you to convert to whether that's free subscribers or listeners or whatever, and you don't have that metric, it will be very difficult to define success. So getting them to take action, even if it's like something very simple, like click on this link to check us out or rate a review or anything like that, just get them started with taking action. And that's more something outside of your control, right? We can't really typically always control what our listeners do, but what is on inside of our control is knowing ourselves. So before you sign up for sponsorships, which I will say is very taxing, it's a long process from meeting a brand to pitching them to negotiate. It could be a time consuming and long process. But before you even think about that, really understanding who you are as a podcaster and as a creator is essential and key. Understanding what are your values, and if there's a brand that comes to you, do you have a filter where you can be like, this is not in alignment, or this is in perfect alignment and it makes a lot of sense? Do you have that certainty within yourself to know, hey, my show has these core pillars and my listeners are avid fans of XYZ? Once you know yourself and you know your listeners, you can then find brands that are in alignment, that have good synergy, and then you can start building and building off of that. But if you're not quite sure who you are as a creator yet, you're not quite sure what your show is about or what people think about your show, or they're not necessarily taking any action, it could be very, very tricky. Last thing I'll say here is that a lot of people think, well, engagement, right? I'm not hearing from my fans or listeners, and they kind of get discouraged by that because they're like, I'm creating these podcast episodes, I'm not getting any engagement. All of those clicks when you mention to your folks to like check out the show notes or click on this link or sign up for the newsletter or do whatever, that is engagement. It's not like them chatting with you, but all of those link clicks and all of those like likes and hearts and stars and all of those things, those comments, all of those is engagement. I will be the first one to say that I don't have my listenership, been running my podcast for 5 years. I don't have this like community that where they're going to be like super vocal and like tell me about their trips and tell me about the deals that they got and back and forth and conversation like that. But I will say that if I say, hey guys, check this out, they're going to do that. So that kind of helped me to reframe what community looks like as a podcaster, and that influence that we have, that it could really be like, that's really influential. When you mention something and someone trusts you to go and do it, that is building community, and that's also being influential as well.
Okay, so Danielle, knowing all of this, do you have a framework that you've put together that helps people put together these sponsorships?
Absolutely. So I would encourage folks to think of a 3-part framework. And again, this allows you to, this is actually once you know that you're ready for sponsorship, you're like, I'm ready to take this on. What's next? A lot of folks are going to go and start pitching right away. And this is where I fell short. And this is why I teach this framework, because if you're pitching brands and you're putting yourself out there without doing the pre-work, when questions come, you're going to have a shaky foundation, or they might not even answer your responses or your pitches because you don't have all of the proof, right? So here's the 3-part framework. The first thing I want you to do is to focus on building your portfolio. Meaning, what would you like to showcase to a potential sponsor down the road? Is that ads? Is that full featured episodes? Is that even off of the podcast? And that's Instagram Reels and Instagram Stories. Whatever you want to get paid to do in the future, start working on building those skills and showcasing that today, right now. Encourage your audience to take action in every episode, whether that's listen to another episode in the archive, click on this link, leave me a review, whatever the case is. You always want to have in an episode an action taking. Get them used to not being passive listeners, but active, engaged listeners. So building your portfolio can really take as long as you want. It can be something that happens over a 1 to 3 month time period. It could be something that you spend an entire year doing. I'll say now, as an experienced podcaster where the majority of my income comes through sponsorships, I still take on one portfolio building project a year to push the edge of sound design, to push my creativity, to expand myself. So especially in the beginning, take the time to build a portfolio, but you can continuously do that even as you are getting paid and it's part of your income stream. So that's number 1. Second part of the framework is your media kit. A lot of brands are going to ask you for this media kit, so why not have this handy dandy document ready for them? This document is, think of it as your professional resume. Part resume, part describer of what your show is about, but it's this public document that's going to share all of the things about your show, including insights, stats, analytics, the description, all the things is going to be housed in your media kit. So when a brand comes to you or you want to tell a brand and showcase your story to your brand, you have a succinct document that goes all in. And I actually have a freebie for everyone. If anyone's interested, I have a media kit checklist that folks can just go ahead and download. So you'll know exactly, there's like 25 points on there. It's quite involved, but it will tell a comprehensive story for your podcast.
Where do they get that checklist?
I'm going to say DanielleDesir.com/media kit will be the link that we'll use for that. And then the last part of this framework is your work with me page. As I mentioned previously, brands sometimes have a very difficult time imagining what working with a podcaster would look like, especially if it's not a very popular brand or they haven't worked with a podcaster before. So make it super clear and crisp for them by having examples and case studies that they can review. What your goal here is to have a proven track record and to track everything, whether that's your downloads. If you're looking to track link clicks, you could use a tool like Bitly, where you can track to see how many clicks something gets. And this, again, starts to prove your return, prove why they should be investing in you. So to recap, with the sponsorships, build your portfolio, also create a media kit, and lastly, your work with me page will showcase what you can do and why they should hire you.
So once all of those are created, how do you go about finding the right sponsors? And then how do you approach those sponsors?
Absolutely. So finding sponsors, there's a number of ways. I would say one of the easiest ways is to be an active listener of other podcasts and see who else other brands are sponsoring. That can be a really great way to get introduced to different brands. I will say, if you hear some of these big names over and over again, more than likely they're part of an agency, and that is a lot harder to tap into. But if you know it's like one of those brands that are not necessarily getting a lot of, they don't have this mass huge campaign, that could be a great opportunity. So I have on my phone like a list of a bunch of brands that like, hey, if they sponsored this show, they may want to sponsor me. So that could be a good way. And I also like that approach because they've invested in audio. So more than likely they know how audio works. They're excited about audio. So it'll be typically an easier sell. If you're going to trade conferences or industry conferences, this is a great opportunity. Go to the expo halls, talk to those brands, ask them, hey, have you ever worked with a podcaster before? Or would you be interested? Grab those cards, jot down notes, whatever you can remember at that time. When you come back home, email them. I wouldn't say pitch them unless you have a really great angle, but ask them, hey, can we hop on a call? I'd love to hear about what you're working on this year, just so that you can kind of get to know them. FaceTime is so important in the world of sponsorships. So get to know the people behind those brands. And then lastly, I would say make a list of products and services that you enjoy and you actively use in your sphere as a creator and as just a person in your industry, right? So for me, I'm in the travel industry. I use tons of tools, tons of flight stuff, credit cards, and all these things. So what I would recommend doing is just make a list of those products and services and see which of those are you super jazzed about that you want to get started with, like pitching and start building a relationship. With this finding sponsors, I think, yes, we want to find them, we want to reach out to them, but understand that it's a long-term play. Just because you reach out, you may not hear back, or you might hear something unfavorable. So really think of sponsorships as a relationship, as like, I want to be introduced to the people behind this brand. And even if it doesn't work out right now, it can lead to something in the future. But that relationship is so important to actually being able to secure the deal and get the money at the end of the day.
Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is sponsored by PodUp, the ultimate podcasting platform. As podcasters, we're always looking for ways to simplify our workflows, grow our reach, and make more money. What if I told you that there's a tool that combines more than 35 essential podcasting features into one platform? That's exactly what PodUp offers, and it's transforming how we create, grow, monetize, publish, syndicate, and do so many other things with our podcasting content. From recording and editing to website building and audience engagement, PodUp covers virtually the entire podcasting process. What sets PodUp apart is its focus on growth and monetization. The platform includes AI-powered features that help you save time on tasks like creating short video clips and transcribing episodes. It also offers tools for guest management, content syndication, and email list building, all accessible from one centralized dashboard. For those of you looking to turn your podcast into a revenue stream, PodUp provides integrated monetization tools to help you market products, courses, and services directly to your audience. What's even better is that with PodUp, you don't have to waste time and money switching between multiple softwares to produce your podcast. With PodUp, you get all 35 modules within one fully integrated platform and for a fraction of the cost. If you're interested in simplifying your podcast workflow while expanding your reach and making some money while you're at it, check out podup.com. That's PODUP.com and get a free trial of the software. Now, back to the show. So we know of sponsorships in mid-roll ads or maybe pre-roll or post-roll ads. We know of sponsorships maybe is in an email newsletter. In addition to that, what other innovative sponsorship formats have you seen?
Yeah, so I would actually encourage everyone listening in to make a list of everything you produce for your podcast. I mean, everything. The Instagram reel, the IG graphic, the YouTube video, all of those actual things you produce for your show are billable assets that you can rope into your sponsorship package. So that can include things like dedicated show notes, even the transcripts, including that's valuable. That could include YouTube videos that you create and share on YouTube, even tweets. Social is huge, right? So IG stories, IG lives, IG reels, even your link in your bio. You can say to a brand, hey, listen, like you could have your link in my bio for 7, 14, 21 days. And as I'm creating all of these assets, people are going to want to click on my link in bio and check you out. So that can be something. I think that's probably the most innovative, link in bio, but it's really as wide as you want to do. So in this exercise, I would recommend just putting down on paper all the things you create for your show or would like to create for your show if you had funding, and then really figure out, okay, which of these things am I actually passionate about? When you're creating your packages for sponsors, I always say lean into your strengths and things that you actually want to create. Try not to just do things for the sake of money and then you hate the process of it. So in your deliverables list of things that you want to potentially work with and create for a brand, make sure that those are things that you're jazzed about. You would have no problem doing. Your team can do this and execute in confidence, and it's not like a drag. Because again, you're your CEO here. Like you get to create this offer for them. So make sure you're including something that you really enjoy.
In my work with sponsors and advertisers, they're all looking for an ROI, especially if you want to keep them going and not just have a one-time ad campaign, but you want to have a long-term relationship with them. How can podcasters most effectively generate an ROI and then demonstrate that ROI to the brands? And just to define the term ROI, it means return on investment.
So I will say that it all goes back to the goals of the brand, which is why it's so important if you can chat with them and to really learn what their goals are. Because once you know from them what they said that they want to achieve this year, you will be able to measure what success looks like. Every brand and every campaign is going to be different. I wish I could say they all are the same, but they're not, because success looks so different. There's one brand that may want to actually get signups to their free app, right? There's another brand that may literally want your impressions, meaning that they want to be associated with you and they want people to hear about them over and over and over again until they have this affinity. So for you to know what success looks like, it all starts with, hey brand, what are your goals and what are you working on right now or in the near future? And if you're one of those people that's like, I don't want to hop on the phone and I don't want to go on Zoom and talk to a brand, okay, you're going to have to give it up. A big part of your job, especially if you are doing these campaigns, like you're not doing like these big HelloFresh campaigns, but you're working one-on-one with the brand, like you want to have that FaceTime. You want to ask them questions. You want to have those silly banters that you have. And then ask them those important questions like, hey, what are you working on? And how can this campaign work for you? Like, what would you want to happen at the end? And they'll tell you flat out, like, and you could, based off what they say, you should really internalize it and say, is this realistic? If they want 1,000 clicks and I'm a smaller show, maybe I'm not the right show. I'm not the right person for this, right? So asking them the hard questions it really sets you up for success because you know what your benchmarks are and you can determine if you can reach it realistically and if you can't reach it realistically. But some of the things for me, what success looks like, especially in the travel industry, is getting the word out there about the destination, telling compelling stories in audio format, and getting clicks, whether that's to the destination's website or getting clicks to their Instagram profile or just really driving traffic to their sites and their assets is one of the things that, okay, we know a campaign was really successful. One of the things that, again, for me as a travel creator that you probably might not think is like my measure of success is literally when a brand takes my episode and they embed it on their website. That to me is a huge, it's a huge accomplishment and it's a huge, wow, because they value this just as much as a YouTube video and they want their website visitors to listen to this episode and they want their people to be invested in it, not just my audience, but their audience as well. So there's just simple, little things like this that you might start to pick up and be like, they really appreciated that and way more than anything else. So it's a kind of a opaque answer, but again, it just goes down to the goals of the brand. And if you can achieve those goals and tracking every little thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a value of credibility that influencer or podcaster provides to the brand that the brand cannot give themselves. I saw a study that 77% of people don't trust what a brand says about themselves. And so they need influencers like you to tell the world they're awesome because people don't trust them to tell the world they're awesome. Okay, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen podcasters make related to their sponsorships?
I would say waiting for a particular downloads number to start approaching brands and start taking this seriously. Again, when we were talking about what brands really care about, yes, reach was part of it, but there was other things like you knowing yourself and you having this relationship with your audience where they actually take you up on your offers. These are more important than your downloads because your downloads will continue to grow and you can showcase that. So don't let your downloads be the thing that's holding you back and there's not a number that you can wait for. Also, every industry is different and every niche is different. So waiting for like this 10,000 downloads may not make a lot of sense if you have a very very small niche. So that's one of the things I think that's a mistake. I think not having your email address visible is a huge mistake. I need to see your email address everywhere. I'm talking about your socials. I want to see it on your website, Friend Center, because we want to make it super easy for brands to reach out to us and connect with us. And if we bury the lead, we're just losing the mark. Another mistake I think is pitching brands prematurely. Like I mentioned, they want to see your media kit. They want to see examples of your work, even if they don't even know they want it. But it just again puts you above the rest because you thought about everything that they could potentially want. So making sure before you send your pitch out, do all the pre-work, do all this layer building and preparing your assets. Other things I think that's important, lastly, is I think a lot of podcasters use the terminology that commoditizes them. So using words like advertise and even sponsor just throws you into this pile of like commoditization where you're not actually partnering with the podcast and with the brand to create something really compelling for your listeners and for their audience to grab onto. So instead of using commoditization words like advertise and sponsor, I always say, let's partner together. And I'm talking about a true partnership. Like I will run ideas by the brand, not asking for permission all the time, but I'm saying, I want you to be involved. I want at the end of the day for you to be really happy about this and for me to be happy about this. So partner is probably the word I would use instead of advertise and even the word sponsor. Lastly, I'm saying some bonus best practices also. Hop on the call with them. Don't be afraid to ask them to go on a Zoom call. If they do invite you to a Zoom call, say yes. Take the opportunity to get that FaceTime because they're going to remember you as a person, your ideas, that just the banter you had, the connection you had, that will more than likely get you funded versus another podcaster. And then lastly, my last bonus tip I would say is update your media kit regularly. You'll have the checklist that we provide that shares with you all those 25 points and things like that, but it's not a static document. Like I know personally, my resume, I don't even remember the last time I looked at it, but the media kit is something that should be updated every time a brand reaches out to you, every time you're reaching out to a brand, because your numbers are going to change, your followers grow, your downloads grow. So you want to accurately reflect your brand at all times. So make sure that your media kit is something that is not static. It's very dynamic.
To wrap this up, is there a success story that you could share illustrating the success of a successful sponsorship deal from both the podcaster and the advertiser side?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first brands I work with, they had their own travel podcast. And the goal of that campaign was to get my listeners to check them out. And when I thought about the deliverables of that campaign, I thought about, okay, what would be the most convincing to do? So I put together a package that I felt like would move the needle. And at the end of that campaign, which I would say, I think we reviewed it 30 days out, there was, I would say, over 200 people who went from my podcast to their podcast. And if I didn't track, like using Bitly to track all those link clicks, I wouldn't know. So I think tracking is that for me, that showed me that, okay, understanding their goal, but also tracking on my end is very, 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 very important. So that's been one of the campaigns I'm like really, really proud of. I think also for one of my clients was a nursing podcast, educational nursing podcast, and they really wanted to work with a conference that they go to every year. And initially, they were a bit disappointed because the response was, "We don't work with podcasters. We don't really know how that's going to work. We don't really invest that way." But I kept on saying, "Okay, this is a relationship. Like, go back with new data, new information, keep the conversation warm, and really showcase, hop on the phone, right? Do all the things that were talked about today." And by the time the conference went around, they signed on as a client and they received a $5,000 sponsorship package as a result of being persistent, right? So not letting that first no stop them or hold them back. These are all, again, you have to really have tough skin. And remember, we're building relationships, and a no is just not right now. It's not no forever.
If our audience has enjoyed listening to what you shared and they want to learn more about your products and services and shows, what are the best ways for them to do that?
So let's connect over on my website, DanielleDesir.com. Again, if you use the /Media Kit, one word, you'll have access to that Media Kit checklist. So you'll have all the points there. I'm also really active on LinkedIn, so connect with me over at Danielle Desir Corbett and let me know what your takeaways were from the conversation. What are you going to be doing differently, or if there were any aha moments that really caught your attention?
For those of you that are watching or listening, if you have not yet checked out the VIP upgrade for the summit, I encourage you to click on the button that's below this video and see all the cool benefits and bonuses that you can get there, such as a 30-day free trial of the PodUp software and a 7-day challenge course of how to start a podcast. Thank you, and I wish you success in your podcasting sponsorships. And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number one, podcast sponsorships involve partnering with brands to promote their products, services, or experiences, typically through ads or other marketing methods. Number two, brands care about synergy, which is alignment with their target audience. They care about reach, which is downloads, page views, and followers. And they care about past sponsorships when considering podcast sponsorships with you. Number three, building a portfolio of past brand collaborations, even through affiliates relationships or self-initiated campaigns, is crucial for attracting sponsors. Number four, a 3-part framework for sponsorships includes building a portfolio, creating a media kit, and developing a Work With Me page. Number five, encouraging listeners to take action in every episode helps prepare them for future sponsored content and demonstrates audience engagement to potential sponsors. Number six, finding sponsors can be done by noting brands sponsoring similar podcasts, attending industry conferences, and listing products and services you personally use and enjoy. Number seven, innovative sponsorship formats can include various content types beyond traditional ads, such as social media posts, dedicated show notes, transcripts, and even link in bio placements. Number eight, understanding a brand's specific goals is crucial for measuring and demonstrating ROI, or return on investment, for sponsorship campaigns. Number nine, common mistakes podcasters make include waiting for a specific download number before seeking sponsors, not making contact information easily accessible, and utilizing commoditizing language like advertise instead of partner. And finally, number 10, persistence and relationship building are key in securing sponsorships, as initial rejections can often lead to successful partnerships later on. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Podcasting Secrets. I wish you success in your podcasting sponsorships. And if you're looking for a great podcasting platform, I recommend you check out PodUp. 35 different modules have been integrated into one platform to help you create, grow, and monetize your business around a podcast. And you can get a free trial at podup.com.